Madam Mayor, it is 6:05 and we are live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lake Worth Beach Utility City Commission meeting revised of Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. Can I have the roll call, please?
Mayor Betty Rush,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Mimi May,
Here.
Commissioner Anthony Segrich.
Present. Thank you very much. Mr. Segrich will lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Here comes Mr. Ed Liberty, our electric utility director, to give us an update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, Ed Liberty, Electric Utility Director. I just a few very short comments, other than to say that things are going well. Construction is underway continually around the system and producing results. I remarked to some of my team, when we look at these long weekends that we've had, especially this one, and you come back and you realize the phone didn't ring the whole weekend. No major outages, and we're making progress. And that doesn't mean that we won't have outages, right? We will, but we're having fewer and fewer all the time. We talk a lot about reliability, and it's happening. It's producing results, and we're having more good days than we have bad days.
And we had some pretty strong storms over the weekend that kind of blew through here. So thank you.
Yes, we did.
Thank you and your crew.
Thank you. Welcome. So one of the things that was particularly good is I know last week, right before those storms came in, Michael Jenkins, who's our energy delivery manager that runs all of our line crews, came to tell me that he made the decision that he was going to hold all of our crews overtime past their normal departure because he saw the thunderstorms coming in. And lo and behold, we had outages that popped up in about 4 different places in the city. Rather than just having one troubleman to run around and take care of them all, he had 4 crews that he launched right at it, and everything cleared off the board very quickly. So that was good.
Please thank him for us.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. And so are the linemen on the team. They take a lot of pride in restoring the system and getting things right. And that was on a Friday night. Now, we all know what Friday nights are like, right? We want to get home. And they agreed to stay a few more hours and take care of things. So they did a great job. Construction at Canal continues. We've energized the 2 new transformers out there. So they're now hot. That yard is going to go live within the next few days on the distribution yard, what we call the 26 kV yard. That's going to go live likely next week, early next week, if not sooner. So that's going well. The new 138 yard is progressing as well. CERC seems to be happy with what we're doing. That's going well. And we're working on communications issues with FPL. That doesn't, and with OUC, that doesn't mean we're learning how to talk to each other. We're making sure that the relays and the microprocessors communicate properly over the fiber optic lines, and that everything is in order. Final checks on relay protection. So we think right now that somewhere between June 9th, June 12th, we will be in service completely. So that's coming along really well. So good near. Yeah, that is the second tie line. Right. So it's available to us now on an emergency basis. FPL is energized all the way from Military Trail to our facility at 138,000 volts. They're flowing power through the facility and back out to themselves. It's not flowing all the way through our system yet to Hypoluxo, but a few more days just to make sure all the communications processes are correct. The trip schemes work the way they're supposed to, from one way or the other, or from the middle to the ends. Make sure everything's good to go, and then we'll throw the switch on that.
Well, so we'll be hooked up to that second tie line now?
We are hooked up, but we're not taking energy from it. It's just
right.
Like think of it this way: the power's in the plug, but we haven't plugged into it yet.
We should have a little photo op of that. That's a big deal.
I think we will once we have it plugged in completely.
What's the plug in? Like I want to be there when you like slam the thing and make it go.
We can we'll see what that's going to look like, what time of day that's going to happen, but we can be in the control room in the viewing room, not in the room itself. And
I want to be in the room where it happens.
well,
Hamilton.
I think CERC would have an issue with that many people in the control room. That's why we built the viewing room, as a matter of fact. So that's going well. We're also making great progress. We're about to go live with our annual report for 2024. That'll go live on the citizen-owned-energy.com website. And there's some really good, interesting things there to see. Good story of what we've accomplished. It's more than just a story. It's the history and the groundbreaking of some of the things that we've accomplished. You'll see information there about our carbon footprint, by the way, which is significantly lower than the rest of the country and one of the lowest ones in the state. So that's very, very good. And it's going to get even lower. So we have, good reason to believe that's going to keep dropping, especially when our solar really gets flowing towards the end of this year. We're getting 13 megawatts now from the first site. The additional 20 megawatts will be on by December. We have confirmed through FMPA again, and OUC is in line with this, that the coal plant will retire at the end of this year. That was about 4 or 5% of our power. That's still on track to retire. And it hasn't been 100% coal, but it's still considered to be a coal plant. That'll go away at the end of this year. Looking ahead, we can see that about 50% of our energy will be a carbon-free combination of nuclear and solar. So 17% solar and about 33% nuclear. And then the balance will be under the supplemental contract, which will largely be natural gas. So that's good. Our carbon footprint is dropping, and we're heading in the right direction, and we're doing the right things. So all in all, we have great things to report. Staff's doing well. Everything is on track, and we're getting ready with job descriptions to start hiring under the grant and get going with the grant positions.
That's
So
exciting.
that's ready to go as well. One of the first things we'll do, of course, is get folks, if we have the tools and the trucks ready, we'll get the linemen on board, because they're the easiest ones to recruit for. There's plenty of those in the country, and we can convince a few to come here and get that extra crew filled out and get them to work. So that'll be coming along well. So I think I just wanted to keep it brief, because I know we have other stuff we wanted to get to, but good things to report. Thank you.
Mr. McVoy?
You mentioned very positive news. Thank you for that. That our carbon footprint for our power sourcing is continually getting better. As we go to the 13 megawatts plus 20, obviously that's a variable source. Will that change in any way the nature of our looking for a next supplemental contract, that they have to be, they're the infill, presumably. The nuke plant isn't going up and down. It's the supplemental that goes up and down to balance that. Are we small enough that they don't much care compared to the size of other plants, so they hardly notice the difference? Or is it something that is likely to show up in the contract in some fashion?
It's something that we'll take a look at, and I've given this a lot of thought, and our consultants are here as well. Here's one of the risks if we overweight that, is that there's really probably one player that's in a very strong position because of the amount of solar that they've built in the state. And I'm not going to name who they are. And it would overweight the analysis. And I don't want to put that way ahead of economics. So is it important to us? Yes. But we're primarily interested in price on this next 50% of the power, because we're doing so well on the first 50%. That doesn't mean that we don't care. We'll be at 33, 34, maybe 35 megawatts if you count our plant. We'll be at 17% of our power from solar. That's an extraordinary number to reach in the state right now. And I'm not against having more, but if we limit it to somebody who's got a lot more, we may be giving up on price. So let's see what the prices come in at, and let's see if it's a little bit better. The good news is that there's not going to be much coal burning left in the state. There is one company that's going to continue to have coal in their portfolio, but the others are pretty much shedding coal from their portfolio.
And as a follow-up request, could we get for the next meeting a little bit of a report of where we are in terms of megawatt hours rather than nameplate megawatts, and make sure that our percentages are, in terms of megawatt hours, actual power rather than nameplate power, Because
Well,
the 13
The
megawatts. is-
percentages that I gave were megawatt hours.
Okay, good. And could we get a little bit of a report of what our trajectory looks like and how we expect to get to our goal of 2045?
Well,
I
our
think
goal
we've
is
made
actually,
good
our goal
progress.
is actually 2035.
We've got
There's
two,
and
one at
we're ahead of
35.
that. We're ahead of
Yeah.
that pace. But so 2035 is still 10 years out, 9 years. And the contract that we'll be talking about tonight goes 7 years. So we probably don't need to do something in that 7-year contract, which is, and we'll see what the bids come back at, that aims to make a goal that's 9 years out. So we don't need to, for example, have our customers pay a lot of money to get to a goal earlier. So when we're already doing so well, but we'll take a look at what those numbers are and how to get there. But if we try to make it purely about carbon footprint in this round, we may get some pretty high pricing that's not to our advantage. But we are substantially ahead of where we thought we would be, even though we've had one of the bigger units that was canceled by the developer, not by us. But we're doing pretty good. We also have to be mindful of what our growth is going to be in the future and how all of this is going to be balanced. So one of the things that people have to keep in mind, and not everybody thinks about this stuff, is that, and I often say it, half jokingly, but it's serious. Solar doesn't work at night, and it also tends to work at a time of day that's beyond the peak. So our peaks tend to come what we call the coincidental peak, which is when we buy or wind up being priced for capacity on the transmission system, is outside of the window of when solar peaks. So we need to take a look at what impact it really has on pricing. And then, of course, solar is so intermittent that whoever bids on the supplemental contract has to be able to absorb that intermittency into their book and react to it. So when cloud cover goes over and the output drops, they have to fill the void quickly. When cloud cover passes and the output goes up, they have to be able to back off quickly. So it puts a premium on the potential supplier when you take into account what we call the intermittency of that resource. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for the bidders to price the deal if they have to react to it.
That was actually the basis of my first question was, as we look at that contract and knowing that they are the backfill for that, is that likely to influence? I wasn't asking about how to get more solar, although obviously I'm interested in that too, but it's that backfill. Now, I will say something from having observed lots of data on this from my own setups. It's true that it fluctuates, but what you see, at least what I see, is you can see the typical daily diurnal potential curve very clearly. It's very short dropouts. And so if you integrate that thing and have any degree of storage, it's not as big an effect as you think. Occasionally you'll get a whole day that's gray, but you don't get a lot of those. Usually it's a cloud comes over, and the nice thing about having multiple fields is you've got different locations, and cloud cover is very localized. You don't tend to get like northern Germany where the whole country goes gray all over the place. We tend to get localized things that flow past quickly. So one may go down, the next one is still going. So that sort of thing helps, but it is an issue of how do you backfill?
I don't think there might be one player in the market that has storage, maybe two. The second one that has storage, it's so small that it won't be consequential.
Yeah.
The one that has storage, it's for their own utility book, and I don't think they're going to use that in a merchant function. It would not react fast enough to handle those sags and swells within a 1 to 5 to 10 minute cycle that we see in solar. So they're likely going to do that with spinning reserve, throttling up or throttling down, if you will.
Mhm.
So it's going to be an issue. At 17% of our megawatt hours coming from solar, and that number could be much higher or much lower on any given day, any time, depending on the time of year. That's going to be difficult for people to react to. So that's why we're headed towards the larger players. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is that we are going to give them our hourly data so they can see what our hourly loads have been in the past few years. so they can see those hourly intervals, and we can give them more detailed data if they need it. And they are going to know the hourly production of a typical solar field because it's very much an industry standard.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, there are many ways to look at solar. There's what you could expect, and there's what's the contractual guarantee by the developer, and then there's the maximum it could produce. So it's going to require people that have the flexibility. If you can imagine this, think of it as a throttle on a boat or the pedal on the gas pedal of your car. Somebody who can really move that up and down, up and down, up and down to react to what solar is doing when it's that big of a percentage of our book and meet the load. Nuclear is very stable. So 33%, which is roughly 22
It's not
megawatts,
changing.
is not going to change very much. Although you do have to cover it when it goes out for an outage. So, and we're getting into a lot of detail.
Yes,
It's probably
we
going to bore a lot of people, but it's stuff that we like to talk about.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Are there any blue cards for public participation? Peggy, you got nothing tonight? Okay, these are only member of our public. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of April 29th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I- All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unfinished business A, supplemental wholesale electric and capacity procurement RFP. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Okay, discussion? Or all in favor?
No discussion.
Okay, Mr.
so-
Can he tell us what it is first?
Yeah.
So for the benefit of the public, and we do have our friends from N-Front, that's letter N, and N-Front Consulting, who we selected a number of months ago to guide us through this process. So for folks that are not familiar with this, we buy about 500,000 megawatt hours of energy per year for our customers. We basically buy it wholesale and we sell it retail. And we do have some of our own power generation here at our own plant, whether it's solar or some much older natural gas fired and oil fired units that we use very, very sparingly. We actually produce, I think, less than 1% of our own power. We buy the bulk of it and distribute it. Of that amount, that 500,000 plus that we sell to our customers, about half of that going forward comes from what we call generation entitlements that are ours. So we are entitled to the generation output of a portion of the St. Lucie nuclear plant. That's going to be about 33% of the power that we receive. And then about 17% of our power will come from 2 FMPA municipal solar projects. So FMPA buys that power and it distributes it to its members in accordance with the shares that they elected to buy at no markup. So FMPA is not marking that up at all.
That's 17%.
About 17%. So these are very, very rough numbers. It could vary from year to year based on how much sunshine we have or how much nuclear production we have, but generally speaking, that's about it. So where does the other 50% come from? The other 50% comes from a bid process. We call it the supplemental energy or supplemental capacity contract. We've had these contracts for 14 years now. One bid was run, as I understand it, around in the 2013 timeframe and went in service January 1 of 2014 or thereabouts. And that ran its course 7 years. And that was with OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission. And then we rebid that in 2018, and it went through a public bid process, much like the process we're running again this year. And that went in service January 1 of 2019. There were 3 respondents, FPL, Orlando Utility Commission, and FMPA, and OUC won the contract for the second time. That was a 7-year contract. For the first 4 years, we were locked in, meaning we were both bound to stay in the deal. Year 5, we had the option to leave. We elected to stay. Year 6, we had the option to leave. We elected to stay. Year 7, we had the option to leave. We elected to stay, and OUC had the right to say yes or no. They said yes, so we stayed through year 7. So 2025 is year 7 of that deal. So it expires at the end of this year, and we're preparing to go into the market once again. So we have selected, with your approval, N-Front Consulting, who's here tonight, right behind me, and they're also going to be on Zoom. If we need a lifeline, they'll be on Zoom as well. They've written an RFP, which staff, myself, and Brian King have been a party to. City attorney has reviewed it as well. We have a few more little tweaks that we want to make to it before it's considered final. What we want to do is to take you through that draft today. So that RFP is for the other 50% that we have not already bought. It allows the seller basically to fill the bucket. So imagine that we have a bucket with lots of holes in it, a pasta strainer, for example, with water pouring out of it. Their job is to pour enough water in constantly to make sure that it never goes dry. So they know that some of that water we're putting in there from our own resources, the Stanton or the St. Lucie project and the FMPA solar projects. Actually, Stanton will be retired, so take that one out. So their job is to top it off every hour of the day, every minute of the day for the next 7 years. So they're bidding to fill it. So there's a price at which they will fill it, and that covers their service, if you will. So they have to make sure that all of energy is scheduled to get here the instant that we need it, or not come here when we don't need it. So that's a very complicated scheduling function where they coordinate transmission from the resource all the way to the city boundaries where we have the interconnections to FPL. So it's a supplemental capacity contract where they manage all of that. What we do under the current contract monthly is we nominate how much we think we're going to need. And it's typically within the bounds of what we said we would need over the 7-year period, but we adjust it on a month-to-month basis. We would like to see a relationship like that continue. We are absolutely indifferent to who the provider is, so we're agnostic as to who that is. But we like the way it works, that we can nominate how much capacity we want and then receive the energy. And more importantly, or as important in that process, we like that we can see what the price will be based on a readily visible published natural gas price. That's the index that they price to. We have one right now that is highly visible. It's not one that somebody can say, well, I think it's this, or I think it's that, or it was that. Didn't you notice it was here? No, it's a number that many utilities in the state have access to, and it's somewhat public. We can see that. So we want to make sure that the prices that we get will track an index so we can at any given time take the multiplier, which I'm sure or highly likely will be confidential within these contracts because it's a very competitive business, that they'll take that confidential multiplier times a public index, and we can calculate what the price is that hour, that day, that month. Same thing, simpler thing for capacity. We want to know what they're going to charge us for capacity. Some people may be confused. They hear us talk about capacity energy. What is that? I often describe capacity as the reason you don't put your finger in the outlet, because you know there's energy there. It costs money to know that there's energy resources waiting to serve you. And then energy is what you get when you actually plug in and take it. You have to buy both. And you actually have to buy 15% more than you need because that follows the requirements for having enough reserve capacity at any given time. And it can't be a promise, I know a guy who will get it to you. It has to be firm, no excuses, with liquidated damages and severe penalties for non-performance. So which means that you have to be dealing with companies that have the pocketbook and the resources to actually deliver, not somebody who's going to run out and find a resource after you contract with them. So it has to be somebody also that's relatively close so that they can actually get transmission access. Think of needing a postage stamp to go from transmission system to transmission system. Even though they're all linked in the state, there's a different rate to move power through each one. So if you're doing business with somebody who's multiple, what we call wheels away, you're paying multiple postage stamp rates. The market is so competitive that once you get beyond one wheel, certainly beyond two wheels, the logistics of getting the transmission capacity, getting the pathway on a reliable basis is difficult. But then the price adders for going through each one will likely render them non-competitive. So we try to focus on the folks that are within reasonable bounds. So as you saw in the staff report, we recommended 6 different companies that this bid would go to. Under state law, we're allowed to do that. And the most likely participants that can be successful are in the staff report, and I'll just rattle them off, not necessarily in any order of importance. It would be Florida Power and Light, Orlando Utilities Commission, the Florida Municipal Power Agency, TECO, which is Tampa Electric, which is part of Emera, Duke, and Seminole. Seminole is a municipal, rather a cooperative utility headquartered in Tampa. Duke and FPL are, of course, investor-owned utilities. FMPA is an amalgamation of municipal utilities in the state. And who have I forgotten? Oh, TECO. TECO is an investor-owned utility. TECO, Tampa Electric Company, which is part of Emera, which also has a natural gas utility. So those are the 6 that we think are best positioned to be competitive in this solicitation. Again, we want to avoid people that sell equipment. We're not looking to buy equipment. We're strictly looking to buy power in the quantities that we need from people that have access to the transmission system and the experience to do this on a reliable basis over a long period of time. What we would call a credit-worthy counterparty, a performance-worthy counterparty, and one that is well-founded and based financially to stand behind the deal.
So the action that we're doing tonight is not picking the power company. It's affirming the firm that we're going to use to help us vet the RFP.
Actually, not exactly. We've already
Okay.
affirmed the RFP company. Our consultants is
Right.
Enfront, the letter N and Enfront.
Right.
What we're doing tonight is getting your comments on the RFP, which we've provided. And what we want to do is get those comments. We will reflect those comments in the RFP quickly within the next few days. And we want to go ahead and issue that RFP next week. And there's a schedule in there as well. We want to keep this moving along and because we have to be able to allow them to have the RFP for some period of time. Every company has got a slightly different cost structure, power generation structure, organizational structure. They will have to come up with their response. They're probably going to have a lot of questions from us. They're going to want to go through our hourly data, multiple years of hourly data, to make sure that they understand what they're getting into in terms of our hourly swings. They understand the impact of solar. They're all going to have to model solar. And these companies are all familiar with solar energy. So they've got solar in their own book, in their own portfolio. So they've been balancing their solar. So they'll know how to do this, but we need to give them time to do that. They're going to ask a lot of questions, we expect, and then we'll provide them answers. Then they can finally put a price on. We will then narrow that pool down to probably 1, 2, or 3, depends on how close the numbers are, and then enter into negotiations with them to make sure that they don't just have a good price, that the contract is workable to deliver that price. In this process, I also want to point something out. I've talked with City Council about this. I'm going to ask in this process that I not know which company bid what. I am too close to to the major participants in my role as an officer at FMEA, the Florida Municipal Electric Association, and in my role as a board member at the Florida Municipal Power Agency, and in my role as a board member at Florida Gas Utility, which does the gas supply. What I'd like to do, even though I'm confident in my ability to compartmentalize, is to make sure that I don't see which company bid what number. So I've asked our consultants to basically do it blind as to which company is which. With regards to me, Brian King has suggested the same for himself. That's the process we'll go through.
Good idea.
Obviously, when we get to negotiations, when they've narrowed the pool down, you will be involved in that, understanding who those people are at that time. We'll actually take the napkin off the names, and we can take a look and see who was there. Because obviously we're not going to negotiate on the other side of a dark screen, but we'll have to know who they are at that point. But I'm going to ask that I not know who bid what number.
Thank you, Mr. McVoy.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, that's
And we're
the
gonna have
idea.
this- excuse me, I'm sorry. We're going to do the same 5-minute thing if we need it.
It's similar to what people do in the science world on reviewing papers. Is you're given the paper and you review it on its merits without knowing who the authors are of the institution. Would you and Mr. King be doing that not only for the price but for the terms of the contract at the initial round of screening? That you would just be looking at the applications as the applications without knowing who they are at all?
My intent would be to stay out of it until the price leaders are identified. We see how the pack breaks out, and then we're going to have to open up and then know who we're working with, and because it's going to require our input on the structure of the contract and what that looks like. If it looks exactly like the contracts we have today or very similar, it's very easy.
Right.
But price is one thing. It's the terms and conditions that surround that price, which is an entirely different thing. So we will have to get into it at that time. But at least in the force rankings and knowing which company bid what price, frankly, I'm indifferent to it. So there's no need to have me infected with that information to begin with and put myself in a potential position of conflict.
Makes it easier for
Yeah.
you, actually.
Yeah, it makes it much easier for me to sit at meetings with these folks without people wondering, are they talking and what's going on?
Great.
Yeah, I have several questions. So I still didn't really get a clear answer. Would you be looking at the contracts blind as well up until some point, or would you know? It's one thing to separate out the price, but the contracts, as you point out, is a relevant part.
Yeah, I
And
don't
it's-
imagine being blind on the contracts. Once we sort them and stack them from a price point of view and the leaders emerge that we really need to, be in discussion with, at that point, I should see the contract.
Okay.
If there's a concern over that, we can find a way to do that blind as well.
I mean, I would
Yeah.
think that'd be fairly
Yeah.
straightforward, as long as they don't
Yeah.
print their name on each page or something.
Yeah. Now
Right.
we'll have counsel involved through that process, both City Council, Christy Gatto, but we're also looking to select Energy Council that's well experienced in these types of transactions as well, another layer.
Yeah,
So
that seems good.
so there could be a point there where I don't need to be deeply involved in that contract, but frankly,
At
if
some
if,
point
if
you
my
would.
team is going to manage that contract, at some point we're going to have to be able to look at it and say, we can't manage this, or this is very easy. Yeah, we can do that.
Right.
Or these are the issues that we want to see addressed.
Just for a ballpark idea, do you often, ballpark idea of what is OUC's capacity? Our peak need is about 100 megawatts when we're going full to roughly a little bit more. And thinking about that solar and the variability aspect, is OUC, are they 500 megawatts? Are they 2 gigawatts? What are,
There are a few thousand megawatts of generation capacity. I don't know off the top of my head how much of that is solar, but they've also just
no, not the solar part, but just their
their generation
natural- their
capacity,
gen-
and they're
yeah.
also a part of the Florida Municipal Power Pool. So they have additional resources that they leverage in these types of transactions. They've handled our load with really no issues whatsoever, and they've just recently acquired some additional plants. FMPA has acquired additional plants. FPL is continually building and adding new plants to their portfolio, so they're all growing. Seminole has added a new plant, a very, very large new plant as well.
So the issue of, the 17, well, let's say it's 17 plus the 20, so 37, let's call it 40 megawatts of solar going in and out.
No, it's 17% of our generation.
That's right.
So in
Sorry,
terms of
13
in
plus
terms
20.
of megawatts, it'll be 13 plus 20. Let's call that 33, 34 plus our own 1.7. So round it to 34, 35.
Right.
We'll be floating with clouds.
And my point is that needs to be compared to several thousand megawatts of capacity that they're generating, that they're putting out. So they'll barely notice when a cloud comes by. There's not somebody, watching the cloud output of our solar field and throttling the thing. It's such a small variation on it.
Well, I imagine they're going to probably have a live feed for the output of that plant at any given time. So from an hourly scheduling perspective, they're going to need to know that. Now, the 13 megawatts and the 20 megawatts are reasonably close geographically. One cloud's not going to do it. But for example, if it's cloudy in all of North Florida at the same time, then those plants will not be producing much.
Right.
If there's clouds passing over, for example, here, we can see it, and we have the data that shows the dramatic swings in our own solar output.
I see it too.
Right.
It can go almost to zero and then pops back
Right.
up usually pretty
And
quickly.
And just to point out too, that in addition to our 1.7 megawatts, there's about
Rooftop.
2.4 megawatts of customer solar that's on rooftop. And even though they're not taking all of their power from us, we have the obligation to serve them at any moment without notice. So we have to take that into account. So we roughly have 2.4 plus 1.7,
4 or
megawatts
5.
that's swinging by the minute with effectively one cloud in our 10 square mile territory.
Mm.
Okay, we're going to stop and move on. If we have time left over, we'll get back to you.
I don't
Miss-
think my 5 minutes.
Yes,
Yeah, it is actually. It's actually 5.5, but I give some time for Mr. Liberty. Ms. Malinga, you're next.
Thank you. My question is in regards to Exhibit B. In the backup. Line 8 and 9 show Rice Creek Solar and Whistling Duck under Generation Resources. And then lines 18 and 19 show the capacity resources. Why do we have no value for December, January, February? And I thought, because I thought we were buying full capacity from, and I thought there were 3 agreements that we had. I know there were, I know that one fell off. But isn't there another one coming on the line online? As part of the solar project?
Where are you?
In the Exhibit B in the backup, very last page. Sorry to be so difficult, but I just need some clarity.
My name is Stephen Stein and I'm with Infront Consulting. Like Ed said, N and then FRONT, Infront Consulting. Okay, what was the line that you were asking about?
So
again?
on the exhibit on 8 and line 9, we show generation for Rice Creek and Whistling Duck, but then when you come down to line 18 and 19, there's no value there.
Yeah, but what happens is solar units are intermittent, like we've talked about before. So there are different ways that you can count on the capacity. And in the wintertime, a lot of utilities don't count on the capacity during off peak, in the winter months, if you will.
In Florida?
Yeah. So a lot of utilities are recognizing that you can't depend on the capacity in certain months.
Then,
So let me.
but
let me
hang on,
jump-
but then that's gonna give me a bigger question on then why did we make a commitment for as much as we did if we're not using capacity 4 months out of the year?
It's the energy that we want. So here's, let's understand, when we take capacity, it's in order to meet our peak.
Mhm.
And the peak is happening typically between 4 and 6 p.m. So between 4 and 6 p.m., though, in the wintertime, the sun is setting. So it has very low capacity value to us. However, it does have significant energy value to us during the probably 8 to 9 hours of the day that we did see sunshine. Even though it didn't have capacity value at the time of the peak for transmission purposes, which is the coincidental peak, it does have energy value over the course of the day. In the summertime, it has much greater capacity value.
Yeah, correct.
If you look at it over the course of a year, I want to say it's about 45% of the capacity value. This is a unique feature, and I wouldn't want to see the commissioner lose any time on this because I want to make sure.
Well,
people understand that.
I'm understanding what you're saying, but my other question is, I thought that we had an agreement with 3 solar projects and I only see 2 listed. I know that we lost the one, or they said they weren't going to do it. So is this taking into account the additional power that's going to be coming on with
This
that
takes into account the Rice Creek and the
Whistling Duck, but
and
there was a
Whistling
third
Duck.
one?
The third one was Leland, Leyland. That project was canceled a few months ago by the developer because their costs became too high for them to continue, and they canceled that project. That was going to be about 20 to 30 megawatts for us, so that was canceled.
So that's why it's not listed.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Miss Miss May.
Miss Mimi.
Miss Mimi.
Thank you. Okay, I want to like really kind of break this down to like kindergarten level. Okay. So basically there's a cost. So when you say that you're going to look at the cost, bids, the bids for price. Okay. So basically there's a price that is for natural gas. And then each one of the companies are going to come in with their own multiplier. And then you guys are going to pretty much rank them by multiplier, give them the top 3 or whatever. And then what are the other aspects that you're looking at in the bid besides the price? That's just, I mean, I can see the multiplier, get that part. So then what?
So what we'll do is we'll take into account the capacity number that they bid and the energy number they bid. The energy number is going to be ideally a natural gas number, which we can find,
Mm-hmm.
times this multiplier. Typically, think of it as an efficiency number, or we
Right.
call it a heat rate number.
So is it, hold on,
It's
is it
some-
basically like, okay, so here's your price. Here's my, it's like, so let's say I'm company A.
Mhm.
Here's my multiplier. And then I have to prove that I can actually generate and
Cor-
give you all of that
correct.
power.
Correct.
And then we look at all of,
Right.
okay, you can do
And-
this, there's this, and you're number one.
And we'll take their unit prices for capacity and their unit price for energy, and we'll run it through the model of our experience that said, this is how much capacity we typically need, which is B,
Yes.
Schedule B. This is how much energy we need. And we'll say, hey, for company A, their combination of capacity energy year is a total expenditure of X. And we just do that for company
Got
B.
it. That
C,
makes a
D,
lot of sense.
and we
Thank
say,
you.
if we choose company E, we can expect an annual bill based on 2026 expected energy needs of this. You use company A, you expect a bill like this.
Right.
So we can.
So if
force
you
rank-
chose company E, which was the most expensive, you would have to come in front of us and prove why you chose E
Absolutely.
instead of A, where our customers would probably have to eat the cost. So that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you going blind on those. Although it is data, it doesn't, I mean, it's not an opinion. Here's the number, here's the data. Either it is the cheapest or it isn't the cheapest.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have we have Mr. Segrich, I think, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
confidence in this team to bring
Oh.
this to you.
You're doing all right. You don't suck. Thank you for reducing the level of English on our dais to.
She is a math teacher.
She's not an English teacher. All right. New business task order number 7 with Holtz Consulting Engineers, Inc. for alleyway water main improvements project. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, Ms. Malega?
I know that Vaughn is on via Zoom. I just want to say that when I was reviewing this, my biggest concern was making sure that 2J's, since they are a functioning restaurant, has plenty of notice of this project that's could possibly be impacting their business. And I had a conversation with Jamie and Vaughn today, and they're going to start already having communication with them so they can plan ahead and we're not surprising anyone.
Well, Village Flats is where? Village Flats is farther west. I
Yeah, but
believe.
2J's is on the list too.
Okay,
2J's restaurant behind there in the alleyway.
okay.
So the intent, sorry if you guys, this is Vaughn on Zoom, Water Utilities. The intent would be to have the construction in like August, September timeframe. And this task order is just for the engineering, permitting, and construction services.
Okay,
So we have plenty of time for coordination.
Thank you.
okay. Do I have, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. New business B, construction service agreement for the new 6th Avenue South Switchyard Construction Project with Hooper Corporation. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very
Aye.
much, everyone.